fire in Ukraine's Sumy region. Ukrainian authorities say Russian drones sparked massive fires, killing a woman and destroying several homes in the Sumy region. Russia maintains that it never targets civilian residences.
On July 22nd, Ukraine launched the operation that could decide the fate of Crimea. A major shift occurred in the war between Ukraine and Russia. The Ukrainian armed forces, along with their military intelligence agency GUR and the Security Service of Ukraine SBU, launched a widespread, coordinated series of attacks across multiple key Russian territories. It began with the use of Neptune missiles targeting Russian military infrastructure in Crimea. These powerful long-range missiles hit multiple targets, destroying air defense systems and igniting chaos across the peninsula. This was not just a random strike, it was a calculated effort to pave the way for the future deoccupation of Crimea. Ukrainian drones and missiles, followed up by disabling key infrastructure, including energy facilities in Kaliningrad and drone manufacturing sites in Tatarstan. These facilities played a vital role in Russia's military supply chain, particularly in the production of Shahid drones, or what Ukraine calls the Garan-2 drones. Despite Russia's claims, analysis shows these drones are not Iranian-made but rather a mix of Russian, Chinese, Belarusian, and smuggled Western components. Ukrainian forces also struck a Russian airbase in Voronezh, causing widespread fires and disrupting enemy aviation logistics. Meanwhile, explosions rang out in Samara, Stavropol, and the Orenburg region, where Ukraine targeted oil refineries and chemical plants that feed the Russian war machine. These attacks are part of a larger strategic shift in Ukraine's approach, from isolated strikes to a systematic campaign aimed at crippling Russia's capacity to wage war. The strikes are designed to dry up fuel supplies, shut down drone production, and destroy essential components like aviation kerosene and fuel additives. Ukrainian intelligence and special units are even operating within Russian borders, sometimes aided by local anti-Kremlin resistance groups who sabotage pipelines, power stations, and forests used to hide military infrastructure. This kind of behind-the-scenes activity is playing a vital role in weakening Russia's internal stability. It's not just military targets under fire. Even psychological warfare is intensifying. Panic is growing within the Kremlin, forcing President Putin to call emergency Security Council meetings. Long lines have formed at the Crimean Bridge as residents begin fleeing the peninsula, sensing something big is coming. This mass movement hints that Russia's hold over Crimea may finally be slipping, and the groundwork for a major Ukrainian counteroffensive is being laid step by step. But Ukraine's campaign goes far beyond simple revenge or scattered strikes. What we're now witnessing is a deeply calculated, multi-layered military strategy designed not just to punish Russia, but to cripple its very ability to sustain war. These aren't impulsive attacks. Every target, from drone factories to oil refineries, is chosen based on detailed intelligence and with long-term consequences in mind. What's changed in recent months is the structure and coordination behind Ukraine's approach. Military analysts and observers are pointing out how the rhythm of strikes has become more consistent, more synchronized. Every night, key Russian assets come under fire, not only in occupied territories, but deep within the Russian mainland. These operations are being conducted with increasing precision, often by drones, special forces, and local resistance groups working from inside Russia itself. In areas like Tatarstan and Kaliningrad, this coordination is shaking the ground under Russia's war infrastructure, literally and politically. Take Kaliningrad, for example. It's Russia's heavily fortified exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, isolated from the Russian mainland. It's home to naval ports, shipyards, and weapons storage facilities. Ukrainian intelligence reportedly identified and struck sensitive locations here, a bold signal that no place is out of reach. This was more than a symbolic move. Kaliningrad plays a key role in Russia's Baltic military strategy. Its disruption causes ripple effects across Russia's entire northern command, potentially impacting naval coordination in the Baltic Sea. Meanwhile, other key regions like Voronezh, Belgorod, and Kursk, previously considered relatively safe, are now experiencing drone and missile attacks on military bases, radar systems, and fuel storage depots. Back on the Dnipro River front in southern Ukraine, the fighting remains intense, but Ukraine is holding firm. Russian troops continue to attempt river crossings, often under the cover of night or fog. They come in small boats, barges, or even makeshift rafts, hoping to land troops on islands or establish a foothold on the Ukrainian-controlled bank. But time and time again, Ukraine's surveillance drones, artillery, and mobile scout units intercept and destroy them mid-river. Some boats are obliterated before they even reach the halfway point. Russian soldiers who survive are often seen swimming back in panic, while others are captured or lost. The Dnipro front shows how prepared and adaptive Ukraine has become. It's not just about holding a line. It's about making the enemy bleed resources every time they try to move forward. Every failed crossing costs Russia equipment, time, and morale. Beyond the battlefield, there's another layer to Ukraine's effort: sabotage and disruption. Inside Russia, while most of these operations remain covert, enough evidence has emerged to confirm that Ukrainian special forces and partisans are operating well beyond the front lines. Pipelines are mysteriously catching fire. Power stations go offline. Railways used to transport military goods suddenly collapse. Forests that hide Russian weapon depots are being set ablaze. These aren't random accidents. They are part of a broader campaign to undermine Russia from within. What's even more striking is how local Russian resistance groups opposed to the Kremlin are helping. In several regions, small but organized, cells are reportedly assisting Ukrainian efforts by providing coordinates, smuggling, intelligence, or even conducting attacks themselves. This kind of internal disruption is something Russia wasn't prepared for. It opens up a new front, not geographical but psychological, and the psychological impact is showing. Following the July 22nd strikes, Russia's leadership went into immediate crisis mode. President Putin reportedly called an emergency session of the Security Council. Intelligence officials were scrambling to explain how such deep and wide attacks occurred under their radar. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Russian population began to panic. Videos surfaced of thousands of cars lining up at checkpoints trying to flee Crimea. Traffic stretched for hours on the Crimean bridge as residents packed their belongings and tried to escape to mainland Russia. This kind of mass civilian flight hasn't been seen since the initial invasion. It's a telling sign, not just of fear, but of lost confidence. The people no longer believe that Russia can protect its own territory, let alone occupied regions. In places like Sumy and Kharkiv, near Ukraine's northeastern border, the situation is more tense. Russia is attempting to apply pressure here, not necessarily to break through, but to stretch Ukrainian forces and test defenses. However, military experts emphasize that Russia doesn't have the capacity to repeat large-scale offensives like in the early months of the war. To destroy or capture a city like Sumy, they would need long-range bombers, hundreds of aerial sorties, and weeks of sustained bombardment. They no longer have that kind of capability, especially with Ukrainian air defenses improving and Russia's own air force facing shortages of both planes and trained pilots. Ukrainian officials are therefore carefully shaping new defensive lines, not just to hold current territory, but to ensure that Russian forces cannot advance again towards Kyiv or central Ukraine. It's a war of positioning, terrain, control, and endurance. If you found this perspective helpful, consider subscribing for more clear, in-depth updates on the evolving battlefield.